You're checking in with the doctor for the greatest fantasy baseball podcast in the world, starring your hosts, Dr. Fantasy.
I'm ready to rock and roll today.
And Rydawg.
Harrison Masturbator.
Welcome to Doc and Dog, your fantasy baseball geniuses, presented by the Fantasyholics.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Doc and Dog, presented by the Fantasyholics. And this is our last installment of our shortstop mini-series. Today we are talking about our top 5 shortstops in our rankings. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy. I am here with my co-host Rydawg, and we'll hop right into it because I know everybody's very anxious to see our top 5 shortstops here. So before we start with number 5 here, I just want to mention that we had a 3-way tie for 4, 5, and 6 with Bogaerts, Story, and Tatis. So it's kind of really no particular order. So number 5, we'll go over, we'll say Trevor Story, just so we put Tatis higher for you.
Thanks.
Story at number 5. Last season, he had a .294 average, 111 runs scored, 35 home runs, 85 RBIs, 23 stolen bases. He's a good bet to get you 35 home runs, right around 25 steals. Not very many guys do that in today's game. Batting on top of that Rockies lineup, he's going to score over 100 runs. He's always had a solid batting average. There's nothing to hate. I mean, if he was ever to leave Coors Field, that would obviously lower his value tremendously. And if they don't get to play in their home ballparks this year, that'll obviously impact him probably more than any other fantasy asset across any position. But he's always been a guy that there's not really any reason to hate him, but I just can't get behind him for some reason.
I really can't either, and I want to make that point, Doc. A lot of people have Story in their top 3, and it's like I want him in my top. I don't even want to put him in my top 5, right? So you have 80 games where he's an elite top 5 shortstop, and then you have the other 80 games where he's away and he's like a completely different person. So if I'm taking Story, I almost want a very, very competent guy that I know I can rely on as a backup shortstop almost. So say if Story's playing away and I need another shortstop, and I know the pitching matchup's not good as it is, I would bench Story for like anyone in our top 12 that we discussed in previous episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest problem with him, and once again, I mentioned this in our last installment, but when you're talking about these top shortstops, to me it just comes down to value. And Trevor Story right now is going 10th overall in drafts, and that's just way too high. I mean, I think that's the reason I can't get behind him is not that he's a bad player, not that he doesn't provide good numbers. It's just I don't want to take him with my first pick.
No, you don't. And say if we had a full season and there was multiple rumors of him getting traded. So say your first pick, right? His biggest asset for Trevor Story is playing in Coors Field, and he gets traded July 30th, right before the deadline, July 31st. So then now your first-round pick doesn't become a first-round pick at all, and you're in a playoff race. That hurts your value for sure, Doc. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm staying away from Story until his contract situation clears up a little bit, for one.
Yep. Then number 4, we have Fernando Tatis. Last season, before he got injured, he was batting .317 with 61 runs scored, 22 home runs, 53 RBIs, and 16 steals, and that was in a very limited number of at-bats. So I'll let you talk about Fernando Tatis first because that's your boy. So I'll clean it up to see if I have any other thoughts after that.
Yeah, so Tatis is going very high, rightfully so. He's becoming a phenom in his own right, and I remember around this time last year, people were much rather taking Vlad Jr. than Tatis. And I was always on the opposite side. I was always a Tatis guy because I felt like Vladdy. I didn't really think he was going to adjust to the major league level as well as Tatis was. And I'm looking to be right so far in that aspect. I also like the way Tatis plays. He just has to stay healthy. I think health is one of his downfalls. But other than that, I mean, if you're in a dynasty startup, I would definitely take him as a top 10 pick, top 12 pick. But if you're in a redraft league, I'm not going to take him top 10, top 12 just because we know his health issues. And I think there's other players you could take in that top 10, top 12 pick. But, if it's dynasty, I'm all in for it. And I think Tatis in a full season, he will definitely have 90 to 100 RBIs. He'll have 25 home runs, 100 runs scored, and he'll have a 280, 285 average. The metrics showed him being a very lucky power hitter, but I was all on board for it. I didn't really think it was as much luck. I mean, the metrics can be deceiving at times, and it's been proven in the past that it could be. So I don't think it was luck at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in, we'll say, 2 seasons, that he's going to be a consensus first-round pick, and we could be talking about him as our number 1 shortstop for years to come. I mean, I really think that he's talented. And I think that he's going to be more of a 30-30 guy, which is really challenging to find. I don't think he's quite there yet. I think he still has some adjustments to make at the major league level. He's currently going around pick 20 right now. And that's still, and I've mentioned it before with Bo Bichette as well. These young players are going to go through their ups and downs. Can Fernando Tatis be a 300 hitter? I think he can. Will he be in his next full season? Probably not. It takes about 700 to 1,200 at-bats before a lot of players start to settle into their groove. I personally think Fernando Tatis is one of the most talented players in all of baseball, though. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm hoping he doesn't become one of those guys that struggles with injuries. That can obviously be a huge factor. And I guess for redraft leagues, though, the overall theme for me is he's going way too high still. I'm not taking him as a top 20 pick. It once again comes down to the value of it all.
I'd agree. I mean, Tatis he's the top 5 most talented-wise, not top 5 pick, talented players in all of baseball. So I love it.
Then we'll go to number 3 here, which is another one of you boys, Trey Turner. Last season, he batted .298, scored 96 runs, 19 home runs, 57 RBIs, and 35 steals. I'm going to let you start off with this one again, just because you had him number 2 overall, which is much higher, not much, but higher than most people have him. So why do you take Turner over other top shortstops?
So I took Turner because his home runs were a little deceiving. He had 19, and he had 30 shortstops. I think Trey Turner is a 25 guy with a 290 with potential 290 batting average, which I believe he did hit 290 last year. He was playing. He never got his finger completely fixed. He was letting it heal. He never got the surgery to replace his broken index finger. So when he broke it, I could tell his swing was a little off. And he broke it really early in the season. And I remember watching that play live. So he had his index finger out while he was showing bunt. And it was definitely a young player making a mistake doing that, because you never want to be having your index finger out when you're going for bunt. But I noticed he was not making the plays that he would normally make. Now I can see why people would stay away from Turner because Rendon's not there. But I think Robles makes a big jump, and I think Starlin Castro is a very decent hitter in his own right. He had 20 plus home runs in Miami, and he had 85 plus RBIs in Miami, and he played every game last year. So I think Castro will hold his own. He's no Anthony Rendon, but I think Turner's going to have to step up in a huge way if this team wants to win. And I think the way he was gripping the bat last year was definitely not the way he's used to. So I could see Turner going back into the 20-25 home run category with another 40, with going back to having a 40 stolen base year. I believe he was playing hurt a lot last year.
Yeah, and I was just looking it up quickly, but he only played 122 games last year too, just as a side note. The year before he played 162, and he only hit 19 home runs, so he was on a pace to, and that was his career high actually, so he was on pace to break his career high in home runs. One of the reasons I have him 5th, so not that I don't like him, but he 35 steals is misleading because he only played 122 games. He's more of a 40-45 steal kind of guy, so he provides elite stolen base production. His average has always been pretty solid, scores a lot of runs, to me, I just think you can still find a guy that hits more than 19 home runs a season. So his power is a little limited. I wouldn't call him an asset necessarily in that category. Same with RBIs. He is typically only driven in right around 70. So, not that there's anything wrong with his production, especially because it's challenging to find a guy that steals 40 to 45 bases. But he doesn't offer as much upside, in my opinion, in other categories. But he's still, to me, a top 5 guy, no doubt.
Yeah, I agree. I think with his power, I think he's going to have. He's shown power in batting practice, and I think he makes a decent jump this year if he stays fully healthy. I think the power will come.
Yep. The number 2 for us is Alex Bregman, who has multiple position eligibility, third base and shortstop. I had him number 2. You had him number 4. Last season, he batted .296, 122 runs scored, 41 home runs, 112 RBIs, and 5 steals. I really like actually where Bregman's going right now, and it's probably because of the scandal. I personally think the scandal is not going to impact him as much as people think, just because he's always been an elite hitter throughout his career before any word of the scandal throughout the minor league. So I just think he's still an elite hitter. So if you're getting a guy that bats close to 300, he was second amongst all shortstops with 122 runs scored, led all of them with 41 home runs. Looks like he was second in RBIs behind Bogarts. So, I mean, he really offers top value across almost every position or category except steals at the shortstop position. So I really like Bregman. He's currently going pick 18 overall. And to me, without this scandal, he would probably be a top 10 pick, no doubt. So if you can get him towards the end of the second round, as much as it's hard to say a guy you're taking that high has value, I really think at 18 he still offers a lot of upside and value.
Yeah, that's my thing. So with the scandal that went on, I was surprised none of these players got suspensions. But then I guess it's kind of hard for them to get suspended if they're not playing the game at all in general. So I think there had to have been more of a disciplinary action being taken. It's just my opinion. Like, for example, Chris Davis got suspended. This was like a while back. He got suspended like almost a half a season just for taking Adderall. But you mean to tell me these guys steal signs and then they're just firing their old GM and suspending their head coach for the year without pay? I mean, the players need to get some action taken too. They're all big boys. I mean, they made their decisions to do whatever they did, but I think some kind of suspension should have been handed to some players.
Yep.
Even to my boy Springer. Anybody. Anybody. I'm not being biased, so anybody. Springer's in there too. They all get suspended.
And number 1 in our consensus rankings, really everybody's number 1 shortstop is Francisco Lindor. Last season, he batted .284, 101 runs scored, 32 home runs, 74 RBIs, 22 stolen bases. Offers value in all 5 categories. I think the 74 RBIs is a little misleading. I think he has way more potential and upside than that. I mean, there's really nothing to hate about Francisco Lindor. I mean, you could say that their lineup isn't the strongest, which probably is a small knock against him. But overall, offers value in all 5 categories. And I will mention his ADP right now is 7th overall. I still think, once again, that's too high for him, even though he offers the value in 5 categories. Because even though he offers value in 5 categories, I still don't want to spend my first-round pick on Lindor, just because 74 RBIs does scare me a little bit, even if he gets into the 80 range. That's not high for a first-round pick. 22 steals is solid, but it's still not elite. So he offers solid production on all the categories, but I still don't see him being elite for fantasy purposes. So I still have him as my number 1 shortstop, but I don't like his value.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, there's not really – I put Lindor as my number 1 shortstop. I mean, the 70 RBIs is very misleading. I wouldn't want to spend the first-round pick on that. And it seems like the last 5 shortstops we talked about, right, they all offer more so of 4 categories than all 5. Like, you could say Trey Turner doesn't offer the home runs, right? You could say Baez doesn't offer the stolen bases. You could say Bregman doesn't offer stolen bases, and you could say Lindor doesn't offer home runs. I mean, not home runs. He doesn't offer RBIs. So it seems like the last 5 guys we've talked about, they didn't really check the whole 5-box checklist, right? So you could definitely make more of a case for any one of these guys to be number one, but I think everyone just leans towards Lindor just because he's been the most consistent throughout the years.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree with that. So that's it for our shortstop mini-series. Today's installment, we went over our top 5. Overall, we had 5 episodes where we talked about our top 25. So if you missed any other installments, make sure you go back to our YouTube channel and check that out. And if you don't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like the Fantasyholics on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasyholics1 and our new website, thefantasyholics.com. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you next time.
We'll see you next week.